Welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hello. We are your destination for a glimpse into homeschooling from an anti-influencer perspective. We don't do the highlight reel, our lives are so perfect, our kids are perfect all the time, every day is sunshine and rainbows thing. That's not our jam.
No, it's not. But please don't misunderstand. We love homeschooling. This isn't a bitch fest where we sit around complaining about homeschooling and our kids and just life in general. We really do love homeschooling and continue to choose this lifestyle. We love doing life with our respective kiddos, but we will give you the full scoop on what homeschooling really truly looks like day in and day out. We have great days and we have hard days, and we feel the weight of all that goes into managing our kids' education, just like you do.
Yeah, true story. We've been at this a long time, but that doesn't mean that when we enter a new phase of homeschooling, it doesn't take us a hot minute to readjust, or that we don't need to course correct when something that was working all of a sudden goes completely south. I mean, hello, even if you've gotten into a solid groove with homeschooling, along comes puberty. Holy crap, along comes puberty to really show you just how little you know about what you're doing.
This is true. I was just talking actually with someone during a recent coaching session about how kids have these pretty significant developmental changes every about 3 years, right? Like it's just in general the way that they develop and the way their minds change. And so it makes sense that we have to tweak what works homeschooling wise about every 3 years as well. But it gets even harder when you have multiple kids because it can quickly feel like you're starting to constantly tweak something for someone. And it's just like, when is it going to end? And like, unfortunately, probably never, maybe once they're all in high school, but I mean, even then, that's a short window if you've got multiple kids. I mean, I only have an only, so I'm just in the position where as soon as I feel like it's like super smooth sailing and we can almost go on autopilot, and then it all just falls apart. And you're like, what happened?
Brace for impact. Yeah.
Not even impact, just like sinking. All of a sudden, you're like, your lifeboat is just like disintegrated. And you're like, oh man. So anyway, aside from guaranteed realness, the other thing that you can expect around here is a fully secular and progressive space. We have both been homeschooling for years, so we are well aware of just how hard it is to find secular progressive communities in the homeschooling space. We both ended up in conversations about flat earth or kids using litter boxes where you're like, what? Or how college is just another word for liberal brainwashing. And look, once you finally decide that they are for sure for real, you look like the cartoon character, right? Like trying to get out of there as fast as you can. But you don't know when those conversations start that it's going to devolve into this ridiculousness.
Yeah. You're like, they're being sarcastic, right? Oh, wait, no. I think they're actually being serious. Been there, done that, made that mistake before, right? So, yeah, this is not a space where any of that flies. So if you've listened to any of our episodes before, you'll know that I am an intentional yet very hippie unschooler. And Amanda classifies herself as an academic aggressive homeschooler. And while we might sit pretty far apart from one another on the spectrum of homeschool approaches, we can agree to disagree about tons of homeschool stuff. Totally cool. We're good at that. I can respect what she's doing and I can cheer on her kid. And I know the same is true in reverse. But we do not agree to disagree when it comes to human rights. So if you're a homeschooler that thinks crusty old white guys have no business dictating what goes on in your uterus, we should be friends. If you're disgusted and baffled that grab them by the pussy wasn't the end of that despicable man's political career, join the club. Like, how is this still going on? If you would cross any river, desert, or sea to protect your children and don't judge others who do the same, borders be damned, then you're our people. give us a follow wherever you're listening, on social media, on Patreon. There's a free follow option on Patreon where you can follow for bonus content, but you can just kind of bask in the joy of finding life-minded homeschoolers and keep in touch with us on any platform that you hang out on, because it's rare in the homeschool world to find this vibe.
Yeah, true story. But we're here. Yay. Some days better than others. Yay. We're here. All right. So what are we chatting about today? Today, we are digging into all things diagnosis, IEP, and accommodations. So many people understand how those things relate to the traditional school environment or like any sort of brick and mortar situation. But let's talk about how it all works when it comes to homeschooling. And like so many other aspects of life, a lot of these questions are answered with, well, maybe, or I mean, it depends. So whether your camp labels are negative or camp, I need all the data I can get, we've got you covered in today's conversation. I mean, at least hopefully. But first, we try to start off every episode with a weekly recap. It's part of our keeping it real vibe around here, just in general. So how's your week been, Megan?
I feel like a little bit of a broken record, but busy. Okay. busy. We've been working on this book for ages, which is super exciting. It is aptly titled The Only Homeschool Book You Actually Need. We've been working on it for over a year now, and we are so proud of it. It is a modern and secular guide and an interactive workbook to help you plan out your homeschool journey step by step. We have read tons of books on homeschooling, parenting, education, you name it. And we love learning new things. I mean, fun fact, we met in a book club that read those kinds of books in 2020. So we've read a lot of books over 6 years together. And then obviously independently outside of book club, and prior to that, independently. And while we love learning new things, can never get enough books, far too many of these books info dump on you and then drop you like a hot potato. So you're like, okay, I know a ton about homeschooling now, and yet I still have no idea what my first step is if I want to do this thing. So you sit there paralyzed, maybe panicked, maybe both. So we built a book that gives you all the info that you need, but then segues into a workbook where we'll help you plan out your very first step, then your second step, and your third step. It is a one foot in front of the other. And we will do that throughout the entire book until you find yourself at high school graduation. Hence the name, The Only Homeschool Book That You Actually Need. So give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon. Yes, there's that free tier over on Patreon because we have some awesome launch activities planned. We've got Q&As and giveaways and all that good kind of stuff. So that's been busy. It's been bananas busy, but also super exciting to be putting a bow on something that we've worked so hard on for so long. So pretty pumped about that. And we hope you love it. We're pretty confident you're going to love it. So yeah. Beyond that, quirky homeschool scenario today. I was downstairs and I get a text from one of my kids that says something like, do this Wordle and report back to me about how long it took you to do, and I will answer no other questions. And I was like, okay. And I'm not typically a Wordle person. My brain does not like puzzles, and I'm not good with spatial awareness, like tons of stuff like that. It's just not my thing. But I'm like, okay, I'll do it. You texted me telling me to do this thing. I'm guessing it's important. I'm like, okay. Then my daughter comes in a few minutes later and she's like, why did I get a text from Liam telling me to do this Wordle and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know. I'm doing a Wordle too. I'm not quite sure what's happening here. Then she says, and he sent me some Spotify link or something. And she opens it up and it was some piece of classical music. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea what's going on at this point, but I'm working on the Wordle. I'm terrible at these sorts of things. And I'm like, this is not a word. Like, what the heck could this be? And I'm going on and so it had something to do, he was in statistics class. So it had something to do with math, and so because we were supposed to time ourselves. And then she had a classical music factor because there was something in there to check and see if it was going to help her with her Wordle or not. And what I never got the word. She got the word. I don't know what was going on because then I was cracking up. He was like, Aiden already did the Wordle today. And then I sent it to dad and dad this. And so it was like a whole situation. I'm still not entirely sure the full scope of what was going on, but he was in class on OutSchool at the time. So it was part of something related to statistics. So yeah. But yeah, that was basically that. It was my daughter's birthday the other day. So that was fun. Family dinner kind of thing, whatever. But yeah, that's kind of pretty much it. We're just kind of winding down. I am leaving for Barcelona by the time this airs, the day after it airs, because my youngest kiddo is taking his AP Stats exam this week, and it wasn't being offered where we live in Portugal. So we have to go to a different international school. And so, yeah, we're doing that. And so that'll be a first for both of us. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it'll be good. We'll see. And yeah, pretty much it. How about you? What's new in your world, Amanda?
Well, I will say that hopefully by the time this airs, I am on vacation with my family, almost completely unplugged. We do have one live event that we have to do this week, but ideally, I will be enjoying a cocktail during happy hour with a perfect sunset view. But for right now, I am happy to report that the laundry from our last family vacation, which, yes, was more than half a year ago, last year to Bali, has been washed. Now, primarily it was washed so that it could come with me on my month of May travels, but whatever. The details are not important. What is important is that the laundry got done. For those following along, Grandma's sugar cookies did not get done, though we did finally decide that we are just going to do Christmas in July again. This is something that we have done off and on for many years. So yes, we're going to do Christmas in July. We'll watch all of the cheesy movies we want, and we will also finally get around to making the sugar cookies. So
That sounds like a plan.
yeah, fingers crossed. As far as homeschooling goes, the math roller coaster continues. I'd love to get off of it. I'm not sure I will. I'm truly not sure where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing next year. We have something like 5, maybe 6 weeks left of kind of our traditional school year because we're in one of those homeschool charter programs in California. Our family specifically, we do like a modified year-round type homeschool thing. So we do some work over the summer break, but my kiddo has finished pretty much all of the Michael Clay Thompson and most of the Hearth and Story ELA stuff that we had, as well as all of his Science Mom classes that he had for this year. So I've got to figure out exactly what we're going to do. Are we just going to supplement with some fun stuff through the rest of the year and over summer? Are we going to go ahead and just start the next level of curriculum now and take it easy over summer and just pick up wherever a little bit more structured and in the new school year in August or September, whenever we start again? I'm just not sure. And I'm sure a lot of other people listening are in the same kind of boat. We see a lot of comments of like, oh, well, we've already finished. What should we do? And either one is fine. It's fine to do supplemental stuff. We've got a unit on health and nutrition, and we've got a whole big unit on investing and finances and money management. Maybe we'll just do those things, or maybe we'll do those and like just a little bit of the other stuff, whatever works. I think honestly, a lot of it will depend on how tired I am, like how exhausted I am after we get back from vacation. And if I'm like, oh, I want to create this whole new lesson plan of this thing, or let's just plug and play with what we have been doing for years and we know how to do it. So yeah, we'll see. That's what we've got going on.
I hear Homeschool Moms Unfiltered puts out really good unit studies. You could always print off a couple of those and work on those. Just saying.
Yeah, it is time to do some. We actually put them in with other things. So a couple weeks ago, we had one on, I can't remember the exact part of history, but some European history stuff. And so we did the potato one, all about potatoes, because it has that great information on the Irish potato famine. And then we revisited it just this past week, actually, because his geography was on Ireland this week. And so looking at some of that stuff. But yeah, lots to do, good stuff. So
well, and you all are getting ready to go to South America, which is where the potato originated, and people don't realize that. So the potato is everywhere in world history. It's like the cornerstone of history that people don't realize. So
I had no idea how important the potato was. It's pretty interesting. I did not know you could freeze dry potatoes, or that they used to back in the day, like a long, long time ago. Makes sense. You can freeze dry anything these days, but I was not aware that they were freeze drying potatoes. Anyway, today's topic, let's do this. It is multifaceted, nuanced, and honestly, given the political climate as we record this in 2026, more than a bit complicated. Okay, so our big questions of the day are number one, do homeschool kids need a diagnosis for things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or other learning differences? And then the second part of this is, does your homeschooled kiddo need an IEP?
Yeah. Both solid points, both stuff we see come up every single day in homeschool related conversations. So
Yeah.
let's do this. You might be thinking of these questions in the context of your current stage of life, which is valid. But as you're listening, we're also going to address how these questions hold up over time. So if you're homeschooling an 8-year-old and you're able to accommodate everything that needs to be accommodated and you're thinking, I've got this, this is good. We're going to be talking about things like dual enrollment and SATs and APs and other programs that might be in your kid's future. And so what is today might not always be the case. And so it's just kind of something to think of as you're listening. Plus, I would love, in addition to the questions that you threw out, I want to throw in a little planned side quest. You're getting advance notice of my not so spontaneous side quest today, because I would love to talk about homeschooled kids and ADHD meds, because it's another topic that comes up so often, more often than I ever anticipated that it would in homeschooling Facebook groups. And it's a big, important one. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on too.
Okay, great. All right. So before we jump in, let's do a little, shall we call it level setting around the term IEP? This is one of those terms that gets used and thrown around all the time, but a lot of people are like, well, I mean, I think I know what it is. So an IEP stands for Individualized Education Program. And at its core, it's a legal document used in public schools. Some private schools will use them, but it is not required in private school. So for kids who qualify for special education services, it details specific needs, accommodations, and expectations for growth and improvement and how that's going to be judged or quantified along the way. But in real life terms, it's basically a plan that says, hey, this kid learns differently, and we are legally required to support them. And these are the specific ways we're going to do that. Now, will they actually do that?
Yeah, I was going to say, in theory, at least anyway, my one and only IEP meeting had nothing quantifiable or actionable as far as how we were going to support my child. So many people, and I know I'm not alone, many people who've been down the IEP path know that sometimes the document isn't worth the paper it's written on. That was my experience. Either because the school doesn't have the resources to provide the legally required support, or the team doesn't have the skills to provide what's been outlined in the document. Maybe a combination of those things. And listen, we are huge supporters of public school. We are not in the camp that is very loud right now politically that feels like it should be disbanded and defunded and all the... You can't have a functioning society without an educated populace like this.
Go vouchers. Everyone
Right.
can go to Christian school and it'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. So we support the public school system. We support teachers. We think they should be paid their value, all of the above. However broken the system may be, it deserves to exist. But that doesn't mean that every teacher who's in the public school system is well-versed in every neurodivergent diagnosis, every learning disability, and has the skills to support learners in the way that's needed. We've talked about it before on the podcast. I've gotten multiple emails from the state of Florida inviting me to job fairs and telling me there's no experience necessary if I would like to come teach in Florida schools. So that doesn't mash too well when you have a kid with really specific needs.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. And look, some families are very lucky and they have great teams and they are very happy in their brick and mortar school. Their kiddo is thriving with an IEP, and that's wonderful. We truly, we love that for them. I say that not in a sarcastic way. Like, we love that for them. If it's all going well and you're really happy with it, that's amazing.
If it is, you're probably not listening to a homeschooling podcast, though. You're here because it's not going well. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, you might be listening to this and be like, oh, well, like my sister, it's fine. It's all going well. Like, what are they talking about? Right? Like, for some families, it does go just fine. But a lot of families find themselves homeschooling and either wondering if they should somehow bring their IEP home with their kiddo, or they're trying to figure out how to get an IEP for their kiddo who has always been homeschooled, but they think that an IEP would be helpful because they're noticing some things. And so let's just start with the IEP itself. Are they a necessary tool? Are they a necessary document in the homeschool world? Maybe. We told you there'd be some maybes today. So in homeschooling, you can often meet your child's needs without a legal document. After all, you get to create the ultimate individualized education plan or program as a homeschooler. You don't need permission to slow down a curriculum. You don't need permission to change your curriculum. You can let your kid move while learning or take as many breaks as they need. You can follow interest-based learning or implement any accommodations you think would be useful. You don't need anyone to give you permission or even really strict guidance on how to do that. So, in other words, and if you listen to us on a regular basis, homeschooling equals an enormous amount of flexibility. Even if you live in a high regulation state, you have just all of this flexibility for how you implement it and how you do it in your own home. And it doesn't violate any of your state laws. Now, in the school system, they can't treat each child as an individual. There are just too many kids. So meeting a kiddo where they're at organically, it just isn't an option. Plus, the reality is it's a government institution that works with children when you're not around. So for better or worse, there is a fair bit of CYA involved in the process. They can't just give your kiddo more time on a test because a teacher is like, oh, I see this kid definitely needs a little bit more time, because inevitably there'll be some other mom in the office pitching an absolute fit that her little one definitely deserves extra time too, and they need this special treatment. And the IEP is a tool that legitimizes and streamlines those parts of the process. It means that you don't have to continually argue. Well, that's not true. Legally, you don't have to argue for the extra time. It should be there. It shouldn't be a problem. And you don't have to fight those kinds of fights. You might have to remind certain teachers that they're supposed to get it, but you don't have to fight for that in that same way.
Yeah, instead you fight to get the document implemented. It's like phase 2 of the process, right? Yeah. All right, so if you listen to what Amanda just said, it's all true. So you might be thinking, oh, bingo, don't need that. I can check get IEP off my to-do list. Not necessary. Here comes the maybe, okay? So it really depends on how IEPs work in your particular school district. Sometimes IEPs might open up services like speech therapy. It might make certain therapies or services attainable in a way that would be too expensive through private pay or even copays through your insurance, because as many of us know, insurance seems to be less about providing benefits and services and more about putting hurdles in your path between you and the treatment and services that your kiddo needs. Or in other words, putting hurdles in the path between the insurance company and the paying of those services, because they don't want to, and they're masterful at getting away with not paying for them. I mean, I was just telling Amanda the other day that I was disappointed because I'm going to be in the US over the summer and I cannot align my schedule with the dates that Luigi the musical is showing in New York City. And after Blue Cross Blue Shield made me cry more times than I can count over getting my kids ADHD meds, it feels like it would be a therapeutic experience for me. The tagline for the musical is A Tale of Love, Murder, and Hash Browns. And I want to go so badly, but alas, my schedule does not allow it. And I digress. But yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, back to the IEP. If the IEP might not be necessary, depending on where you live and what it does for you, does getting a diagnosis really matter then? For us, the answer to this one is much more clear, and that's a yes. Diagnoses matter. So we're going to give you a whole bunch of reasons for why we feel that way. And we hope you'll listen. If you're like, they said that they were here for both the people in the labels are not a good thing camp and the others. And now they're like, you have to get a diagnosis. Hear us out, please. Okay. So first you have this kind of idea of validation versus labeling. A diagnosis can feel like someone finally saying, you're not imagining this. There's a real reason things have been hard. At the same time, some families worry that once there's a label, people stop seeing the full child, right? This amazing kid that you've created. And now they're just going to see the label or the diagnosis first. And the thing is that there might be some of that, but you're homeschooling. So for the most part, you can create a community of people who are not going to behave that way. There's not a big need for you to keep people in your life that are going to stop seeing the amazing kiddo that you have and only see a diagnosis first. I'm just going to put that out there. If you've got people in your life that are those kind of jerks, it's time to start thinking about how you slowly move them out of your inner circle. I will also say that getting a diagnosis can shift expectations. This is one of those things, sometimes in really helpful ways. I know when we got specifics for my kiddo, we had some really clear, like, stop doing this. Don't do this. At this age, these kinds of things happen all the time. Your kiddo is never going to be strong at that. So just stop pushing it, stop expecting it. And it was really helpful to have someone just really sit me down and be like, why are you asking your kid to do things that they can't do? And I'm like, oh, that's actually a really assholey thing to do. Like, you're right. Okay. Sometimes when it shifts expectations, it's in limiting ways that are less helpful. And unfortunately, that's just a reality of this. Life, everything in life comes with pros and cons. And this is one of those cons that you would have to be aware of. And again, tweak. You have a lot of control over the environment. It might be time to make a few changes.
Yeah. I've had that conversation with other parents when it comes to things like ADHD, because for some reason ADHD is always treated as like not the same as other medical conditions. Like, it's so strange to me when people talk about, we'll get into meds later, but when people talk about meds and I'm like, if your kid was diabetic, would you be like, I'm not so sure that we want to do insulin, right? You know, like stuff like that. But when you say it shifts expectations and then you know to stop expecting certain things, it's like, if you know there's certain things that your kiddo is probably just not going to be capable of doing, you need to know that. Because if you had a kid who was sight impaired or blind, you wouldn't be like, just try harder. I don't understand why you can't focus and see the things, right? It's like, it's the same concept. But if you don't know that, then how can you work with it, right? Yeah. I've also heard people worry about potential career issues with diagnoses. And I get it. I mean, I think if you're taking ADHD meds, stimulant ADHD meds, you can't be a commercial pilot. I think there's military exclusions for certain diagnoses, which right now, as we're talking about the draft, I'm thrilled that my oldest son is autistic. I'm like, you don't want him. He won't be helpful for you. Don't take him. So I'm like, is there like drafting Everett? Let's draft them all. You know, I'm like, no, thank you. He has a bunch of diagnoses. I'll keep him. Thank you. I get it. I've never understood the pilot one, because I would rather have my pilots taking adequate medication than raw dogging ADHD while I'm on the plane. I don't get that one, but I get it. It's a valid thing, but it's like the universe saying that's not your child's career path. Then you have to work with the kid you have. So that's one.
I mean, whether
Yeah.
you agree with the rules around it or not, I'm not positive that a person who needs medication to manage a condition should take the job without the condition being well managed to make sure,
Yeah, not so much. Doesn't make sense. Yeah. Now, I will share an interesting tidbit for you. Here in Portugal, very different mentality when it comes to diagnoses, because there's a thing where once the kiddo has like an autism diagnosis, it's like the scarlet letter. And so there are a lot of people who avoid the diagnosis because their kid will be treated differently, but not in an okay way at school or something like that. So I find that kind of interesting. We, I think, have evolved in the US to this perspective of like, it's important for kids to know who they are, people in general, not just kids, to understand who they are, how they tick, the way they work, the way they function, the way they perceive the world, perhaps differently than other people perceive the world, to bridge those gaps. That's not happening here in Portugal. That's not happening at all. So it is very interesting, depending on where you're listening in the world, how that might be different. But yeah. Another thing that's brilliant about labeling, in my experience, has been this shorthand for support. I feel like autism, especially, I think a lot of people don't know a lot about autism, but they're at least familiar with it. And they think they have a vague understanding of what they're supposed to do when they hear about autism. Some of it's misguided, but a lot of times very well intentioned. And so like when we go to a restaurant and the amount of tomato sauce that is on the pizza needs to be specific to the absolute measure. If I'm like, he's autistic, I'm going to need you to run that tomato sauce quantity by him. You know, people are like, I don't really understand autism fully, but I know that there's something happening here and I know that this is important. And I'm like, okay, great. You know, or like we had Leah on last year during autism acceptance month, and she was talking about profound autism. And she's like, yeah, the label sucks. And it's really like a gut punch every time you have to say it. But she goes, in a medical scenario where I need to make clear to someone how to interact with my child or what the baseline is here, I need to be able to say profound autism, and I need for them to know what that means. And so it does create that shorthand in situations like that sometimes. So yeah. So getting the diagnosis, sometimes it's relief. Like you said, Amanda, like, oh, that's why this has been so hard. That's why I've always been the most tired parent at playgroup. I get it now. That's why other people's kids sleep through the night. That's why other people's kids eat a wide range of foods. So sometimes it's relief. And there could also be a fair amount of grief mixed in there, a combination of the two, one or the other, depends on your situation. Sometimes it feels good to have those answers and some forward direction. Like, okay, now I know what we're working with. I'm an action-oriented person. I go forward with this information. But grief can show up too, in the sense that you're mourning the ease that you thought learning or life might be for your child, or a future vision that you had for your child that may or may not be possible, depending on the circumstance. So both can exist at the same time. Both are completely valid. And if you're having emotional whiplash between the two, also very valid.
Well, yeah. And I mean, you brought up relief and you spoke specifically in the context of the parent, but it can also be true for the kiddo.
Oh, heck yeah.
I mean, there's so many questions around identity for both the parent and the child, but there can absolutely be relief for kids who are like, oh, maybe I'm not stupid. Maybe I'm not dumb. Maybe I'm not these things because actually I have this thing. You know, it's so like just a sense of relief of like, well, I was starting to think maybe I was the dumb one, you know, and look, identity questions are going to come up in all of the ways over all kinds of things as you get closer to puberty and the teen years and all of that. But kids are going to start asking questions like, is this just how my brain works? Or is this hard because I have this thing? And for both Megan and I, we would really advocate that you would much rather your kid be saying, does my brain have a hard time doing this thing because I have this learning disability? Rather than, does my brain have a hard time doing this thing because I'm dumb?
Mhm.
It's a natural step in figuring out who you are. And for them to be able to look at this and start thinking about like, well, this is how my brain works versus does this define me? And you're going to have to help them through that and help them understand, no, it doesn't define you, but it's a part of you. It's part of what makes up who you are. Just like in both of our families, our kiddos are multiracial, and that doesn't define them. It doesn't dictate every choice or path open to them, but it is a part of who they are. It's a part of their story. And to be honest about that, we hear all the time parents who don't want to tell their kiddos the diagnosis or the label that they have. And then the flip side of that is you don't have to look very hard on social media or even just news stories to find adults who are like, I had no idea. And I went to seek out this diagnosis as an adult. And then my parents were like, oh, yeah, we knew, but we didn't want to hurt your feelings. So we never told you. And they're like, oh, my God, my life could have been totally different. And a lot of parents will go through these same kinds of struggles, their own reflection, whether it's, did I miss this earlier? Was there something else I should have done or I could have done? But also, this struggle, it's going to be there. How much do I share? How upfront am I with my kiddo about things? But I really do think, and we try not to speak for each other, but I'm sure Megan would agree that the more honest you are with your kiddos, again, age appropriately, like we're not asking you to throw them under a bus with so much information, but the more honest you are from the very beginning, the more you can build scaffolding into their life to help them succeed and embrace the differences and even some of the challenges. The more that you know and understand, the more you can start scaffolding from a really young age and help them be whoever they want to be in all of the ways, help them get everywhere they want to go. Over time, the goal truly is helping the child see the diagnosis as information, not a limitation, not a label, but something that helps them understand how they learn, how they move through the world, and how they're best going to succeed. And hopefully you, as the grown-up in the equation, are also there at that point, hopefully sooner than they are. I would say at the end of the day, a diagnosis provides you and your kiddo with knowledge. A diagnosis doesn't change your child in any way, shape, or form, but it gives you language. And the reality is access.
Yeah. I think one of the most helpful things people can do when they get that diagnosis is to fill their social media algorithm and their bookshelves with influences that will help in this scenario. And so we've got some suggestions for you, but it's funny because I typed up my notes for some of the people that I wanted to include in this and whatever yesterday. And then it's so funny because today in a Facebook group, and I just thought of it, somebody posted, now this is somebody who's posting under a business account, their Facebook business name or whatever is Early Literacy and Parenting with Gladys. And so she's engaging in homeschool groups to try to start a business or whatever. Okay, fine. But what was super interesting was her post says, parents, do you stay calm when your child is being difficult or do you react instantly? Be honest. So do you have a first impression of that, Amanda? Is there like wording in there that just like, gotcha?
Well, I have a pretty good idea where it's going.
Yeah.
It's going, you'd never pay her to interact with your child at all, but
not in a million years, right? Because I'm like, in the Ross Greene book, The Explosive Child, he talks about kids do well when they can. Kids aren't giving you a hard time. Kids are having a hard time. It's this reframing. And I'm like, this is somebody who's not interacting with my child. I get it. Your intention is good, but we are not on the same journey. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it comes to who you're surrounding yourself with, check very carefully. Some neurodivergent creators that I love, NeuroWild, and what a talented artist also NeuroWild is. They do these amazing cartoon sketches that kind of work through all this stuff. And there's one in particular when you're talking about like, will this define my child if I get the label? And M put out a cartoon at one point that said like, you could label your child ADHD or dyslexic or this and that. And if you don't, your child already knows they're different. They already feel it and they already understand that, but they don't have the language for it. And so instead they will label themselves, and it will be stupid, lazy, weird. It'll be all of those things. So either way, they're going to get a label. It's going to be self-assigned and it's not going to be good, or it's going to be accurate and it's going to make things clearer for your child. So NeuroWild for sure. My favorite, Joe, and it's just J-O, and favorite is spelled with the U because they're Australian. Love, love, love. Love my favorite Joe. Great. Kaylin Partlow, who was on Love on the Spectrum for just one season, but she is an autism therapist, and she's written a book called, I think it's called My Life on the Bridge. Amazing. If you're looking for an adult autistic perspective, love her. And if you see puzzle pieces on anything autism related, please run. Please run. If you need to know why, Google autism puzzle piece ableist. There you go. You'll find it. Jonathan Mooney's books. Jonathan Mooney was one of our first book club selections. We had him on. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Read The Short Bus. Read Normal Sucks. Normal Sucks is one of these books. It's like a you'll laugh, you'll cry book because he's funny as hell. And yet there are aspects of his story that are so heartbreaking from his own education that you will also cry. Absolutely amazing. Debbie Reber's book. We did book club with Debbie Reber at one point. She's also been on the podcast. Her book, Differently Wired. And she also runs a community for parents of neurodivergent kids. Amazing book. But it's interesting because somebody put out a thing saying that one of the side effects of ADHD medication should be rage. Not because the medication actually causes rage, but that once you've started taking ADHD medication and you realize that your brain can function that way and that your brain is capable of that, and it can be quiet in that way, and you can function and move through the world so much differently, that you become rageful that you didn't have it sooner. And in the cases that I've seen, it's adults who are now discovering this, and it's been withheld from them their entire life. And they're like, I didn't need to raw dog ADHD my entire life. Like, I'm pretty pissed off. I feel cheated, and my education would have been different. My relationships would have been different. All of these things. Not every ADHD person needs or wants medication, but plenty do. And having that option is nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm in one of those parenting groups where everyone was due in May of 2017 or whatever it is. And in that group, there's, I don't know, we started with like 130 people. We're still maybe at around 100 of us. But in that group that we keep in touch, there are several women in there who are in this camp where they're like, why did no one care enough to pay attention to the fact that ADHD looked different in girls? And why am I just now realizing that my life can be totally different? And that rage of like, how unfair is it that no one helped me when I was just really struggling through school and early relationships and all of that. So absolutely true.
Yeah, especially in women, because it looks so different that so many women don't figure it out until their kids are diagnosed, which was my situation. And I was like, I just thought I was like a really intense Aries, but no.
Really intense Aries. That's funny. I'm a really intense Gemini, but anyone who listens to the podcast is not surprised by that. All right. So another thing to consider when it comes to the diagnosis and IEPs is the future. Because the thing is, right now, you can have your kid work on times tables while they're bouncing on a trampoline, if that's what helps them focus. Or you can scribe for them for all of their writing assignments. No big deal. Megan is going to take her planned side quest. I'm going to take a quick side quest here. Scribing is the process of having your kiddo dictate to you stories, journal prompts, worksheet answers, anything that they would want, any way they want to answer something, any writing that they want to do. Whatever it is, you as the grown-up, write it down for your kiddo. A lot of homeschool parents feel like this is somehow cheating, but it is absolutely a recognized accommodation that can be requested in an IEP. So if you're in a brick and mortar school, you have a kiddo who's struggling with this, you can request this specific accommodation. Now, most schools aren't going to give it because they just don't have the human resources or the physical space to be able to pull a kiddo aside for every written activity and be able to have adults scribing for the kids. But that doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't utilize it at home. Okay. It is such an important accommodation. We have a unique ability to be able to really lean into it when we're homeschooling. So please consider scribing if that will help the process in any way, shape, or form with your kiddo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Soapbox done, at least for now. I don't know. We'll see.
No promises.
Yeah. If you listen regularly, maybe, maybe not. All right. Anyway, what happens when your kiddo wants to do something like dual enrollment, or they want to actually go take a class on campus at a community college? Maybe they're doing an AP class, or they're just going to skip straight ahead to the AP test, or maybe they're just sitting for the PSAT or the SAT. Maybe they want to attend a summer academic course that's going to be like all in, and you're not there to provide the accommodations. The reality is you will very likely need documentation for accommodations. At this point, just having documentation of the diagnosis is often not enough. You'll probably need recent evaluations. You're probably going to need proof of ongoing need. And without all of this paperwork, for better or worse, your kiddo is probably not going to get extended time on tests. They're probably not going to get alternate formats if they need to be able to verbally share something, or even if they just need certain types of graph paper or certain types of graphic organizers or things like that. They're not going to have access to that. And they're probably just not going to get other needed supports or accommodations without that paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those big don't wait until the last minute moments. But also, if you can afford it, don't put it all off until high school just so you only have to pay once.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
So at this point in the episode, you might be revisiting that to-do list one more time and be like, okay, to-do list, get neuropsych eval for little Susie. And I'll channel my inner Alexis Rose, if you're a Schitt's Creek fan, and say, love that journey for you. But we might need to burst your bubble with a little bit of reality here. So let's start with the step that many people start with, the pediatrician. I mean, you can start there, but really no matter what they say, it wouldn't be my stopping point. And I definitely wouldn't take meds related to ADHD or anything mental health related from a pediatrician. That is specialist territory, and you need a specialist. For example, for ADHD, they typically work off this super wimpy screening tool called the Vanderbilt ADHD Diagnostic Rating Scale. The Vanderbilt is to a full neuropsych eval what taking someone's blood pressure is to a cardiac workup. They are not the same. The blood pressure check can tell you, hey, something might be off here, but it doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you how serious it is. It doesn't tell you exactly what's going on. For that, you need a full cardiac workup. You need imaging, tests, specialists, the whole picture. So the same idea. The Vanderbilt can flag patterns or concerns, but a full neuropsych eval is the thing that digs into cognition and processing and executive functioning and learning differences. The Vanderbilt is 2 pages. Okay. Like that's not coming from a 2-page worksheet. The full neuropsych eval is the why behind what you're seeing, which gives you the, what do I do now? How do I proceed? Along the same lines, if you express concerns to your pediatrician and they're like, yeah, I think it's fine. Trust your gut. Go to a specialist. I mean, how many stories do we hear where people are written off by a doctor and they push and they put, and sure enough, it's a thing. So either way, it would be great if you could go see a specialist.
Yeah, I will totally agree. But we will both admit that's easier said than done, especially in the United States, thanks to the American medical system. I will say for me personally, my pediatrician or our pediatrician was incredibly helpful when it came time to find someone familiar with our specific, less common or well-known concerns. That said, even though we went through our pediatrician, our insurance wasn't touching it with a 10-foot pole. And a lot of people are going to find this. There are barriers to accessing this with any sort of financial help. insurance coverage is incredibly inconsistent, but a general rule of thumb is that insurance won't cover learning disabilities. You have a better chance of having it covered if there's a chance medication will eventually be necessary. That's not by any means, run it through your insurance if you feel comfortable, see what you can make happen. But that's just kind of a general rule of thumb. Wait lists are long, especially at the places that will run it through insurance and try to get some insurance coverage. Private testing is expensive. Even going through a place that will run insurance, but then it ends up not being approved by insurance is very expensive. Going somewhere that specifically does private testing can sometimes be a little cheaper because they know people are going to be paying out of pocket and they understand that and they can work with you a little bit more than maybe the average practice. There's also public school evaluations. They can be slow. They can absolutely be gatekept. I know in a lot of states, if you have a kiddo who is gifted, it can be almost impossible to get a public school evaluation as well for reasons that we've talked about in other episodes and we'll touch on a little bit later. It's inconsistent depending on your district. School evaluations are not typically comprehensive. Some places you'll get a really great one, but oftentimes it's missing some really useful data and information. The reality is schools have a bit of a vested interest in telling you that your kid is fine. And again, this isn't always going to be the case, but they do have to provide services if they say that there's something wrong with your kiddo. And the more they find, the more in-depth the cost and the amount of human resources and that sort of thing. And so there's definitely a weighing there of what they can afford and what they can do. The pros, it is free. If you are eligible for a public school evaluation, if you can do it through your local school district or something like that, it is free. It is extra information. I would just say if you do one and you get it back and you're like, I don't think that they got the whole picture. I think they've missed something. Just keep in mind, I know time is money, but it was really just your time. And so now you might have to explore other avenues. It can lead to an IEP or a 504, which depending on your situation, depending what's going on, that might be helpful. It's very easy to get it when you go through the public school to do those kind of next steps. But there are other ways to also get an IEP or a 504. It doesn't have to be with the public school evaluation in this regard. Keep that in mind. If you're going the private route, it is faster, usually. It is usually more thorough, and you do usually have more control. If you're going private, it is generally easier to say, I have concerns about this. Are we sure we really looked at that? The kiddo was really tired around this, and so could we maybe redo that again or do a little bit more there? You're not going to have that same kind of control if they're running it through insurance or through the public school. But again, as no one is surprised, the con is that anytime you pay private pay for anything in the United States, it's like you just start seeing the bags of money flying away. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, and when we're talking public versus private, beyond what you've already said, and I can't even believe that we have to have this discussion, but right now there's an extra layer of complication to consider, and that's the current political climate. We have video clips of RFK talking about sending people to work farms for ADHD or to get off their SSRI meds. There's talk of using insurance records to create an autism registry. And when RFK talks about autism, one of the first things he says is that these people will never hold a job or pay taxes. So it has a particular 1930s, they can't contribute to the state vibe. And we know how well that ended for people who were different. And if you're not familiar with how that ended, you need our How Democracies Crumble unit study, because these two concepts are straight out of the Third Reich playbook. This is history repeating itself. So that's scary.
Yeah. And I mean, going private can help with some of these things, not filling prescriptions. That's still going to get you on a list. But the diagnosis piece would remain private. It doesn't necessarily go on your medical record. But again, there's a lot of privilege wrapped up in that. But also, I hate to be a Debbie Downer here. If you listen regularly, you know I'm the like, there's always a silver lining person. But in the United States, things are really messed up. Whether you're living here, actually, if you're living here, half the people living here don't even understand how messed up it is right now. If you're outside, you're like, yes, doesn't everyone understand? No, unfortunately, not everyone does. But it's going to take us years, probably decades, to undo all of the really awful systems and backsliding that has happened recently. This is not a wait until Trump is out of office and then it will all be fine situation that we're in here. Sure, it might be a bit better, but the reality is we've got loads of elected officials from the federal level all the way down to the community level that have supported the worst of what Trump and his buddies have pushed through. So if you're planning to wait until it's significantly safer in the US specifically, I'm afraid your child is going to be a full-grown adult well before that happens. So I do strongly believe knowledge is power, and they deserve that knowledge and that power sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shit situation, but it's the reality.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from your child ending up on a government list for being a degenerate member of society who can't pull their weight, we're also seeing school funding resources being cut like mad. So if you're thinking IEP and speech therapy and this and that and whatever, if it previously opened up services, that might not be the case anymore, and it might not be the case for a while. We're also seeing protections for marginalized groups being stripped across the board. And like you said, we don't see anything changing in the immediate future. So continued changes to benefits and services are likely, unfortunately.
Yeah, no. If you're watching video and you see me like laughing, it is totally a situation of like laugh or I'll cry on the podcast.
Exactly.
And, like you just have to take it as sarcasm and like, how the fuck did we get here? Okay, so before we get into Megan's planned side quest about ADHD meds and homeschooling, let's just do a quick little recap. So reasons you might pursue a diagnosis. You need accommodations, whether that's for standardized testing, college, dual enrollment, etc. You want clarity and a better understanding of how to help your kiddo succeed. You want access to therapies and services. Your child is struggling in ways that you can't fully support on your own. Your child's mental health will likely benefit from a better understanding of how they tick and why things are different for them. You might want to be prepared when you enter a season where formal documentation might be necessary, like we were talking about. You might want to meet your kiddo's needs at the highest possible level. And the reality is neurodiversities tend to travel in packs. It is unusual, though not impossible at all, for someone to only have one single neurodivergence diagnosis. So a lot of times neurodiversities mask one another in ways that make it really hard to tell exactly what's going on without a full professional evaluation that can tease apart all of the different pieces.
Yeah. Okay. But we cannot cover this topic without dipping our toes into the tangentially related topic of ADHD meds. Why? Because I said we can't. So we see plenty of posts in homeschool groups where parents begin homeschooling and cut their kids' ADHD meds. It's like they only needed meds because they were in school type of thing. In some instances, cutting meds is why people have chosen to homeschool. They're like, well, if I bring them home, they won't need to take this anymore. They won't need that. And oh boy, we need to talk about this. So the reality is environment can absolutely impact ADHD, 100%. We've done episodes on why homeschooling works so well for neurodivergent kids. And Amanda went on and on before about accommodations that you can offer that they either can't give in school, etc. So homeschooling absolutely can help. But it doesn't change your child's neurobiology. Their neurobiology is still the same, whether they're sitting in a classroom at the building at the end of your block or they're at your dining room table. ADHD impacts executive function. It impacts focus. It impacts emotional regulation. It impacts task initiation, all of that starts to wrap up with mental health as well. There's so much that goes, it's not just sitting still and doing math problems. There's so much more involved in ADHD than most people realize. So meds are not just about compliance in a classroom and like, oh, we keep getting letters home and our kid keeps ending up on red and I keep getting called to the principal's office. Yeah, there's a piece of that in there, but that's not just what it's about. It's about supporting the individual so that they have the same chance of being able to function on the level playing field in so many ways. So homeschooling might change how much medication they need. It might change the timing of their medication. It might change the strategy, but it shouldn't be an automatic, I am homeschooling now. My child no longer needs ADHD meds. That's a conversation that you can have with your kiddo's doctor, not the pediatrician, with a specialist. Have those conversations. But then also, it's like when you're introducing solids to your baby and you give broccoli for like 3 straight days to make sure they don't have a reaction to broccoli before you give carrots another day. Actually, you would do that back the other way around because broccoli is a cruciferous and it can make them gassy. But anyway, I still very much remember the order of all my baby food making days. So you don't want to make too many changes at one time. I mean, to bring your kiddo home and whiplash them into homeschooling and then also take away their ADHD meds at the same time. And they're trying to adjust to so many different things and their neurobiology chemistry is so fucked up. Like, right. So the setting isn't what matters. The kid is what matters. And so there's so much more to it. Like, please, 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 please do not take away your kid's ADHD meds or even make that a top priority, getting settled into homeschooling, working with your medical team. But yeah, please don't. It happens too often.
Yeah. I mean, I think if there's one thing we want you to walk away with, it's this. Homeschooling gives you a ton of flexibility and freedom. You get to meet your kiddo where they are, pivot when you need to, and build something that actually works for your entire family. But a diagnosis, that's what often gives you access to accommodations, to support, to documentation, especially as your kids get older and start navigating things like testing and college and other systems that still, very much exist. We can in some ways create a bit of a really supportive bubble when we're homeschooling, but at some point our kids have to go out into systems that we just don't have control over. And it also gives you clarity because understanding how your kid actually thinks and functions and experiences the world, that's huge. Otherwise, you're just kind of guessing. And your best guesstimate is probably great, but even for the most attuned, involved parent, it's still working without the full picture. Sometimes, oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I, like so many other parents, had basically diagnosed my kiddo before I took my concerns to our pediatrician. And we went for a private assessment because it was not covered by our insurance. Our assessment gave us even more nuanced information and a more nuanced diagnosis than I had figured out myself. And way, way, way more specific information to my kiddo's needs and abilities than I ever could have figured out on my own with Facebook groups and Google. Plus, there's just so much overlap when it comes to neurodivergence. ADHD can look like anxiety. Anxiety can look like avoidance. Giftedness can mask almost every learning disability. Learning disabilities can mask giftedness. Kids can compensate in ways that make things look fine on the surface, when in actuality, like a little duck just paddling twice as hard underneath the surface. And I don't think anyone really wants that for their kiddo. Like, I want you to have to work 3 times harder than everyone else to get exactly where you are. And we'll give you no understanding around that, right? Like, that's not what we're trying to do. And teasing all of this out accurately, it's just not something that you can observe your way into, no matter how closely you're paying attention to your kiddo at home.
Well, have you been following Michael Threets, the librarian, and his diagnosis journey? I mean,
Mhm.
he's got a full team of people who are looking into all, and it's still, how long did it take to get an accurate diagnosis? And I've been having something similar with one of my kids. There's a particular diagnosis that I've brought up that I'm like, I think this might be missing. And I'm seeing a lot of these things. And this is a kiddo that has a team of people that they're seeing regularly. I had the conversation this week. There's traits of this, but those traits also land in this bucket, and those traits also land in that bucket. Even when you have a full team of people that are looking at there's so much overlap that for us to think that we can do it based upon memes and TikTok videos, it's like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not going to be
exactly.
accurate.
Yeah. And most families will truly benefit from the knowledge that comes with the diagnosis and the supports that information can open access to. Like, this isn't about choosing one path and rejecting the other. It's about knowing what tools are out there. If you listen to our podcast on the regular, you know we're big fans of tools, and using the ones that actually help your kiddo, not just now, but down the road too. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal. Not proving a point, not doing homeschooling, quote unquote, right. It's just making sure your kiddo has what they need to thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an easy point to end on, because who doesn't want their kids to thrive? I would like to make things much more difficult for my child.
I'm hoping they really bomb.
Yeah,
I,
exactly. I'm going to put 18 years into this and see how badly it goes. Yeah, which is laughable to think that your job ends at 18 years, but you get my point. So yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. So a lot of food for thought in today's episode. Leave any questions in the comments or come chat with us at Patreon. We have one meeting a month on Patreon specifically for neurodivergent homeschooling. So come hang out with us. Let's chat. But for today, we will wrap up with our mantra, which is, the goal isn't to prove something is quote unquote wrong. The goal is to make sure your child has what they need to succeed in any space they enter. That's what we want. That's, I think, a pretty universal, hopefully, theme. Definitely, if you're listening to our podcast, we know it is, but because you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be an hour and something into this if you weren't.
Wouldn't have made it this far if you were like, no, I don't want them to succeed in any space they enter.
Let
Only
them
a couple.
sink or swim. Yeah, exactly.
Church. They need to succeed in church, but beyond that, I'm indifferent.
They'll be fine. Exactly. Oh, I'm telling you. All right, friends, have an awesome rest of your day. Happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.